Whoops, I'm in the wrong spot. Greetings, greetings and salutations, everybody. Happy Wednesday. I'm back from vacation. You may not be able to tell because I'm in the small bubble here. Got a pretty good tan going. I tan fairly easily. I don't really try to. I put sunscreen on, but you're out in the heat. I was in the Dominican Republic. It was very nice, quite warm. The weather was actually it's very nice. I was gonna say the weather was but actually it's really good. It was in the 80s. We get these kind of sweeps of rain would come in, but they wouldn't last. They didn't really. There's only one time where we were put out of action for a little while because there was some thunder and lightning. It was more of a storm than just rain. But even then, that wasn't bad. It was a lot of fun. I mentioned to a couple of folks on the Discord, and I think I might have made it and posted it. But the trip back was suboptimal, I guess you could say. There was fair bit. Well, the taking off and the flight was fine. We were actually making good time. I think, in fact, we were ahead of time coming into Newark. The problem was that there was some kind of stormy weather in the New York area, at least in terms of Newark, and they weren't allowing planes to land. So we had to circle, and we're circling, and then they let us know that whoa, with fuels, we're running a little bit low on fuel, so we got to go to Philly. And yes, people started groaning, and then we land in Philly, but we're not letting. And at first, I was thinking, oh my gosh, are they going to drop us off in the Philly Philly airport? We're really going to be figure out how to get home, but no, for good or ill, nope. Gotta refuel in Philly and then go back in the air and then go back to Newark and then land again. It was already going to be a late night, but we didn't end up getting back here till 2 a.m. So that was we were supposed. I thought we'd get home at around midnight, 11:30, and everything just took longer. So that was a fun little odyssey to end the trip. You'll notice here I'm sitting on the Wikipedia entry for something called an oppidum, which something new, kind of new to me, but I thought it was kind of cool. And the genesis of where I discovered this is I was watching. So in the we were at a Club Med resort in the Dominican Republic, and it had a pretty good cable selection. Internet was kind of up and down, hard to do. I think my daughter streamed a bit. Hard to do. We didn't, and like a lot of things they do now, they always want to upcharge you for stuff. And internet stream worthy internet was one of the stuffs to upcharge, and we did not take the bait. We didn't fall for that particular thing, so we had to make do with the very sluggish internet that they had. But they had good cable TV, or it's pretty good. It has a mix of mostly Spanish to be expected, some French shows or some French channels, I should say, and then kind of the international American shows. And one of these was History, and then History Two. And one night I was really tired, but I couldn't sleep. And at first, I was watching these reruns of the Vikings series that they had on. I need to really go back and watch that. I don't know why I never got into watching it. It's right up my alley, but for whatever reason, I just never kind of got onto it. But I know it's all out in video and streaming these days, so I really need to get back through it. But after that, they had these other kind of they just started rolling these documentaries, and one was about the ancient Egyptians, it was about Akhenaten, which was kind of fun. But then they had this other one talking about these Iron Age settlements, and how they'll start off the story. They'll always, they want to give it kind of a, I don't know, they want to make it dramatic, and they talk about Caesar and the legions moving across Germania, and they come on, they get to these villages and they're empty. Oh, why? Right, kind of thing. And then they sort of roll back. Okay, let's talk it through. And Julius Caesar, I guess, in his accounts of his conquests or his campaigning in Gaul, mentions this term, an oppidum. And this is the term they were using when they were looking at these kinds of settlements. Now, and now I'm watching it. And so what's really neat about it is these are these towns. They were these fortified towns that I guess dotted the landscape. You can see here. There's a map here showing all these different oppidum. Now I don't know. Oh, they actually mentioned. I was gonna say I don't know where the phrase comes from, but actually I think I saw it. It might be in this Wikipedia somewhere else where there we go. Oppidum is a Latin word meaning defended administrative center or town. So as I've been going through the kind of hex crawling stuff, and I read this in one of these older books that I found, but the idea that I've glommed onto that I've sort of it's become part of my what would I call it? My organization of settlements is that you have towns and villages. And I think so I think in D&D we're mostly dealing with some amalgamation of a village and a town. A town for me, so I try to split them up. I know this is I need to get back in the swing of talking about things I haven't done in a week. In a village is something that is kind of subsistence. Or maybe I don't know if this is a great word. It's you're generating raw materials and foodstuffs. That's what the villages do. Villages don't have inns, they don't have shops, they don't have any of that. They're farming areas. Then you have towns, and towns are what if you're a trade and this is where I get in kind of into trying to think about okay, well, how might you talk about what towns do? Towns can have a multiplicity of purposes. Some of the stuff that a town can do is trading, some of it can be crafting, some of it can be governance. Those are things that towns do, and towns are supplied by villages. Same way that a castle doesn't exist on its own. You can't just have a castle in the middle of nowhere. Where's the food coming from? Food, you have to have something around there, and you have villages that then feed themselves, send the surplus into the castle, or send their surplus to towns. And if we went through, and if you followed some of the streams where I was going through and generating settlements, I tried to we were test driving some settlement generation type stuff for a hex map, and that was kind of part of what I was trying to look at. You're going to have a city per se. Well, you need surrounding villages. You have a town, you maybe need less surrounding villages, and so on and so forth. Because it's kind of an Iron Age version of this same kind of phenomenon in a way, right? You have these walled settlements that are, as we see here, administrative centers or towns. And then when we go look and then we have some Wikipedia, I think if I click on these. So here we have sort of some of the big ones. Manching was one that was highlighted in the documentary that I watched. You see, this is the kind of walls that they may have had with the kind of gatehouse and these nice big fortifications. They had floor plans, or not floor, I should say. They were kind of zoned. So they're pretty sophisticated in terms of how they were sort of zoned. Here's kind of an artist rendering. Here's a reconstruction of a wall. So not here's another one, and then here's another Oppidum from Germany. Here's another one. There's one of these that where's the one? Hold on. Well, I have one on a different page. I guess this doesn't have. Okay. So then so the other thing that's cool is you kind of wake. These are the kind of dives that I like to do, and I'm not trying to paint myself as some kind of unique creature in this regard. I'm watching this documentary. Oh, they're talking about Oppidum. So I start trying to fumble because it's on video. Oh, what is it? I think I spelled it wrong a couple times. Okay, Oppidum, and then I get a name of a town. Then I start looking up that name of the town. You get more information. You start seeing Wikipedia pages, which are wonderful, and then sometimes you run into something like this, which is I found just looking for Oppidum. I'm the title of this being incredibly dry. Urbanization in Iron Age Europe, trajectories, patterns, and social dynamics. But if you get down here, is you get some more nice this image, which is similar to the one that was in the Wikipedia article. You kind of get this one, which is they call it an agglomeration. It'd be great to have a nicer term for that because I'd love to use that in terms of what's in. In other words, if you look at this, and it's not in a hex form, but if you look at it and say, okay, what is this? Maybe you look at it and it's in French. So we've got some kind of military establishment. I don't know if that's barracks, carrière à bâchon. I don't know what that is. It's some kind of, I don't know if that really means an actual hospital or whatever. And they have some kind of dungeons. I'm not sure. I have to read more on that. But you get kind of some neat stuff like this, which shows this place, which is called, where is it? Where's the name? Well, I have it here. It's called Huneberg. Hunenberg, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, which is it's a multi-level built on a hill overlooking the Rhine, and it's actually got 2 levels, and then I think this is where I got the map. Oh, that's something else. But and then we get this map here, which shows how you have the village. So if you were looking using my reckoning, I'm using town, village, all in one hex, right? But you have sort of the fortified area here, upper area with the lower area, which has all of the administration, trading, refining, and then here we have these village, or I don't even know. I don't know if see they have these. I don't know if they just have these 500 meters. I would assume this is. I would put this as one village. I guess we could probably argue about is this meant to be multiple villages with these, but no, I would say at 500 meters, pretty small, but you have the kind of external village, and then and this is kind of what I see picture in my mind's eye about a lot of this sort of towns and villages, right? So you have the town, and then you have the village surrounding the village feeds into the town, and the town or castle, because I think castle would work too, offers then protection to the village. So somebody's coming, they try to get in there, which I think is where you get the kind of Mont and Bailey castle type, which started off as basically something even simpler than this, even though I think it comes later, which is have an area at the Mont, which would be a hill, and then kind of a tower and sort of a walled area atop the hill or mound. And essentially from that top mound area, people could escape to it, gain shelter from. Any case, I thought this oppidum was pretty neat, and I think I'm going to use some of the stuff. I'm not going to call them oppidum because I don't know. It's kind of a funny word to me. It doesn't, I'm looking for something that kind of has a cooler sound, but it's a neat idea. And I think another way we can kind of get, especially if you're going for an earlier medieval feel, I think we can kind of look at some of these things. And granted, this is from the Roman era, not the medieval era, but I think you could see a lot of the same pressures. So they talked about how there used to be the kind of neat part of the program, and I wish I had a better summary because they gave this sort of, I guess you would say, it's sort of the historical overview of the time period, the kind of rise and fall of the Oppida. And the neat part of it is you starting off with these villages who were on, I think they called this the Amber Road, this big amber trade coming in through here. And then at first you had a lot of these villages could basically, they didn't have defenses. They didn't need defenses. And then I believe they started getting pressured maybe by folks coming from the east, or anyway, they started getting pressured, and that's where you see these Oppida, the rise of these Oppida, where they would construct them. And I think the interesting thing about the Oppida is that they're not organic, that they're sort of created. They seem to be, my understanding is very, very minimal and not at all scientific or scholarly, obviously, but this was a reaction to the problem of, okay, you have all these open villages, and now we're getting pressured. There's violence, so we're going to construct these op. And I think that's the reason why they're so orderly, is because they're not something that just kind of happens over time. They are reactions, and I think from a fantasy standpoint. So yeah, this is kind of okay, blah blah blah, whatever. So in our world, you have this constant movement of peoples that put pressure, and then what happens when these pressures build up? Peoples collide, things happen, right? This is history over and over again. And oftentimes in Europe, right, you have peoples coming in, these different areas coming in, putting pressures on the people already there. Sometimes those people are forced to move, right? All these things happen. In a fantasy game, we don't usually simulate that very much. I think most of our fantasy games are not about the migrations of peoples, but we have monsters instead. And I think when we think about, well, what does the landscape look like? I find we also end up, I guess I would say is I think that we often end up in this kind of idea where you have the kind of right like the borderlands, which if we have a borderlands, then that presumes there's some kind of interior that essentially is safe. In fact, I was on the OSR Discord and somebody even mentioned it. Like, why doesn't people ever go to the centers? We're always on the borders of these kingdoms, and what's happening at the centers of these kingdoms? And I don't know in terms of Mistara or Greyhawk or whatever. I know that there are stories, and histories and things have been written about them. I don't know them. But, in terms of playing, is because that's kind of where the action is. Well, a lot of this stuff is, I think, in reality, there's not. What I was going to say is this zoom in. This All these areas are much more fluid. There's not a, that like, where is, so you would look at this area here where we have this kind of culture that's spread, but there are different, peoples. This isn't, France and Germany and Italy. These are all peoples, and they share a lot of commonalities. So we would call them, maybe I think these were all, they call us like Gaulish, or whatever terms we want to use. Celtic, I think, is the Celtic. Yeah, I think it was Celtic. They were talking about it as a Celtic culture, but even then, there are different tribes, if you will, Celtic peoples, and then even within that, there, where's the borderland, and where's the sort of the heartland, not heartland, but where's there, everything is borderland. I guess is what I'm trying to say. There's no part here where, like, all these are these fortified settlements, and of course, you look at those medieval maps, or those maps of France, let's say, that show the positions of medieval castles, and they're all over the place because there's not a. It's like the D&D has this kind of old west thing where in the old west, in the 1800s and into the early parts of the, or yeah, 1800s and early parts of the 20th century, maybe, but mostly in the 1800s, really. Yeah, I guess it's pretty much over 1800s, that push west. There literally is kind of, okay, here's a border. Beyond that is not really under our control, and, or, because we gave it to the Native Americans, and we're about to stab them in the back, but whatever. But, that's kind of out there. We are pushing a literal boundary. There is a little boundary for this. This is ours, and this is not. And you might look at the outlines of this area and say, oh yeah, we got that here. We got this kind of rough border, but that's not really accurate to what's going on here. As things are moving all through here. This is all kind of fluid. Forgetting the non-Celtic peoples that may be on the outskirts of here. You have all the internal things with these Celtic peoples who aren't necessarily getting along, and all these things going on. So there is no point where you go, well, look, Hayden Graben doesn't need a wall, doesn't need to be there because it's in the interior. It's not out here at the border. It's in the interior. Why does it need it, or whatever this little place here? Why does that need it, or why does, and well, they need it. They need it because there is no, everything is the borderland. The borderlands are right up to your gates. That's why you need them. And I think that, and so, like, I guess, to make a short story long, that is, I think in our fantasy games we often create these false, almost nation states, kingdoms and things, where we have these interiors that are safe, and then it's the borders that are tricky. But I think the reality is that those kingdoms are made up of all these smaller units who, even if there's no external pressures, there's internal things going on. And things shift, and allegiance shift, and alliances change. And suddenly a place that thought they might have been safe because they're in the interior is now on the border of some other, the Duchy of Montbevrave, or what does it say? I don't know if I spelled that correctly. Or Montbeuvray is now at odds with Bourges, and so suddenly there's a borderland here where there wasn't one. I thought, I hadn't seen that Opera before, and it's just like this. Actually, these two maps are really cool. This is a neat area. It'd be cool to go. I wish this is where I went. I wish, like, man, I wish I lived in Europe or somewhere I could go visit. They have the upper and the lower, and this is, I feel like I should make a place based on this because this is really cool. You got the river, nice, forms a nice natural barrier, but then you also have these ramparts coming up, and then this two dual level, pretty darn cool, I must say. So that is that. What else do I have on my agenda? So I thought the Opera was cool, and I feel like there's. And the other thing I think is, I'm always reminded, I think, when I run into something like this that I had no idea existed. I'm like, oh, this thing Opera, that's really cool. That there's got to be a whole bunch of other really cool stuff that just don't see because I'm not reading the right things. I'm not in the right spot, so I miss some of this cool thing. Like I guess there's a German term also, Fürsten sites. I don't, but they're kind of neat, kind of neat. So I thought I would share that because I discovered it, and I think there might be some neat things to mine, especially if you're going earlier in the medieval period. That might be something interesting. The other thing that kind of linked up to this is I was listening. I'm a big fan of the Dan Carlin podcasts, and I hadn't listened to the his latest hardcore history. He puts them out so rarely now, but I still fall behind on listening to them. They're I mean, I know I don't want to mean this as a bad thing because I love the fact that they're long, but they're long. I know that that's part of what takes them so long. Takes him so long to do them is because they are long. Um, but his one about the basically the Vikings and their their what's the word I'm looking for? I guess their saga, kind of the saga of the rise and fall, if you will, of Vikings. And he's talking about the kind of 900s right now, where I am in the podcast, and these ideas of where the sort of feudal system might have come up. And it's not clean and neat, but this concept that you have pressures from Vikings, right? Coming in, hitting areas, and there's no, or not that there's no central control, because depending on which era we're talking about, you have Charlemagne's successors, the successor states to Charlemagne, kingdoms, successor kingdoms in here. But that if you're if you're I'm just going to use these. If your capital is here at Bourges and you have this territory over here to the west, and Vikings kind of sail in here and hit this town here, let's say, by the time you get from wherever you are, especially if you're Bourges or maybe you're at Coron, and you come over here to respond, they're gone. And so with a response to that is to have to go from having a centralized control, where you're in your capital with your army potentially, or you're where you could gather your army and then you move out. It's too slow. The Vikings, they're in their ships, zap, they're in and out, they're gone. You need to have control points local to these areas. So you start building fortified things, and there you get these kinds of early versions of keeps and castles, and you can scatter them around, try to find these points, river mouths or good ones, or where they have major roads, and certainly places where you think money is going to be coming in and trade, and you want to protect that money and that trade. You start fortifying, putting fortified areas with armed folks who are now close. So now when someone sees the Vikings entering the river, it's not a week before these guys show up, or even days. It can be, hours, and then it that helps change things. So I thought that was really neat. And I'm not saying to put Vikings in your game, though you could, but I think monsters pose a similar risk. If you have a dragon or something, how, if your army is essentially located far away, how are they getting there to deal with dragon predations or lesser things or humanoids or whatever it might be that are predating on you? How do you get there? How do you protect your lands and your people and your, probably most importantly, your cash, whether it's in terms of actual coinage or in terms of product, goods? How do you protect that stuff? Well, you got to have folks nearby on the ground to protect them. So what do? You build you build your castles. You build these fortified settlements. So I thought that was kind of neat, and it just kind of hit me at the same time. Like I got both these little two barrels of this coming from different things. Like, oh, like these are these neat, hey, people are incoming. Well, this is, and so I guess it just leads me to think that in a lots of monsters and things, and they are potentially predating on things or showing up and causing chaos and leaving. There's no safe spot from a dragon flying in. You need to have measures in place. You, as a dragon flies, can be pretty darn far. There, if the dragon's coming, there's no place that's like, oh, here I'm safe. I mean, maybe there is underground. I don't know, in the center of a volcano. I'm not sure, but it's not very many places. So you need to have protection. You need to have constant protection. So that kind of when I talk about it in sort of the hexagon things, how I've kind of gotten this place in my brain of like you really need to have strong points. Kind of, you're not you just not gonna have villages just in an organized way. Like I could see if you have a a single isolated settlement, maybe has some weird relationship or it's kind of sneaky, hidden, it's tiny, then maybe that can survive hidden out there in some woods or somewhere and nobody really knows it's there and they got a really small footprint and they don't have any neighbors and nobody really knows. Yeah, maybe that could survive. But in terms of something that's organized much more than that, is you're going to have strong points somewhere because otherwise, whether you've got Viking types or you've got nomadic peoples or just migrations of peoples putting pressure on monsters, big monsters with pointy fangs and giant teeth are coming. And where are you going to go when those are coming? I mean, I suppose you could argue, as somebody's doing some annoying honking out of my window, I suppose you could argue that magic affects both ends of this. One end being you have magic creatures who are doing supernatural things, and therefore you need the response, but also that there's, your Gandalf types, your good mages who are out there. But I mean, I don't know, depending on what the makeup of your world is, how many of those guys are around, and they probably can't be concerned with watching all these areas. And what could they do if even if you could scry from one of these spots, just getting everybody there? I mean, maybe if you're a really high level wizard and you have access to some kind of mass teleportation and things like that. I don't know how many people you get in there. I haven't looked it up, or whatever version of the game you're in that has something like that. Maybe you've got, gates, traveling gates that you can open up, but it's still probably the numbers are fairly small of people you can get in there. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know the sizes. I don't know how long you can keep them open, blah, blah, blah. It's still probably difficult logistically to get people far away where it's much easier to say, hey man, we're gonna build this castle. Maybe we'll use magic to get the castle up faster or get something. Though it seems like, at least for these early settlements like these Apida, given that they're using kind of earthworks and then building on top of it, seems like you can get maybe the who's got the better view. This might be fairly doable in a relatively short span of time, and it's probably not going to stop a dragon, but it might give pause to a bunch of other things. These are things you can do. Things that you can do. So I thought that was neat. I enjoyed the watch. Gave me something to do, and it kind of got my mind thinking. And I've really been leaning more lately into like being interested in sort of the earlier medieval time period in terms of kind of fantasy as opposed to late medieval. So not having necessarily, not that I wouldn't want to have, no stone castles, things like that, but looking at maybe having advanced to, these kind of starter castle. What does a starter castle kind of look like? Maybe it's something like this, or maybe this isn't even the starter one. Maybe this is even a bit more advanced one. But I thought it was cool. I thought it was cool. So that's that. Opida, and then the kind of pressures. I guess the if I was going to do like a TED talk or do my own paper, the pressures of monster predations and the responses and defensive fortifications and earthworks might be my overly scholarly title. But I think it's something to think about when you're thinking about what are the. I think maybe that's the if I was going to bottom line and say, well, what are we really? What's the thing to think about here is to think about if you have monsters popping up in all these areas, what is the response that any kind of organized, even if they are organized, is going to have? A lot of times with the feudal period, part of the whole vassalage thing was that people found didn't have the resources to deal with this. You're looking at where we go back to this. Well, I lost them. Hold on a minute. Let me go back here. We're looking at this map, and part of the issue might be is that you're located in Bourges. You don't have the resources to be spreading yourself. Okay. Something's happening over here, but something's also happening over here, and something's also happening, and lots of things are happening. You don't have the resources. So what you do is you say, I'm going to give you this area Now you have to do, right? And then you keep and then you have that area and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I don't have the manpower, so I'm gonna get some other people to say, I'm gonna give you, and I'm gonna give you," and everybody you start cutting these little pieces, and okay, now you're responsible for this piece, you're responsible for that piece, sort of thing, right? We don't have the logistics and the support and the bureaucracy of like the Romans or these at these high level empires and different kings to do. So we need to. Literally can't handle it, so we need to cut it up and do that. And so I think in your fantasy world, you might wanna look at like, well, what are these kingdoms, things that we're dealing with? Well, how are they dealing with all this? And what is their response? Is their response are they organized enough that they could have standing armies like the Romans had and have garrisons and have it all be organized imperially, so to speak? Or are they more strapped for resources where they have to say, I'm gonna have to we need to put people we need to empower, I suppose it would be empower some folks to be the eyes and ears and the boots on the ground in some of these areas because I can't, and they will be attached to me, and they'll swear fealty to me, and word is our bond, and now you're in charge. I mean, I was just listening to the podcast. We were talking about the sort of transition from to the kind of the Normans, right, with the founding of Normandy, and that was kind of a similar deal. The French were fighting the Vikings, and they defeated the Vikings and made the Vikings a deal, saying, "Hey, look, we're going to give you this north part of at the time, whatever Francia, Central Francia, and hey, we're giving this to you, but now you kind of work for me, and now it's going to be your job to defend the thing from other people like you. You're kind of co-opting, right? These people who have been trouble, and you haven't been able to control the area up there, so now you're going to give it to them, make them nominally a part of you, but you're also giving them this. Uh, you're sort of giving them buy-in to the system. You're giving them stock, if you will, but that stock is no good if others like them are coming in and raiding it. So you kind of turn them against their former allies, kinds of thing. Which would also be a neat thing to lurk if you really want to have some interesting things with some of the demi-humans, right? Okay, the orcs are bothering you and whatever, and oh, they're raiding us, they're raiding us. Well, what if you said, all right, orcs, your orc chieftain, I'm going to give you this area. You're going to report to me, but this is going to be yours. But now that it's yours, you are going to, those orcs are not going to want other orcs or goblins or other things to then come in and start raiding them. So that kind of gives, but they also have knowledge of how they operate. So hopefully they have some expertise in dealing with other raiders. I think the other thing it does is that it forces them to have a home base, because that was one of the other issues with the Vikings could disappear and you wouldn't know where they came from. If they've got towns and settlements and home bases, now you know where to find them. So that you've kind of you've sort of sneakily removed one of their advantages, which is this idea that they can just kind of sneak attack you and then run away. So cool stuff. But anyway, that was as I was on sitting around, well, on the flights, listening to the podcast, and then watching the stuff up, and that all just kind of came to me. I have another topic. I have another 2 topics, I will say. So the second topic I thought was interesting to me is in Daniel's game, aka Bandits Keep. Daniel, I play a fighter, and a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, maybe more, my fighter became a paladin, and so my fighter been is 6th level now. Yes, 6th level, and it was just kind of it's one of those interesting things. I think that I'd be curious how it happened in the original games. You're kind of getting to a point where it's like, all right, what am I doing here? I think this is where you kind of right. I think the original impetus is like, hey, you're going to start doing domains. I think the problem or the challenge with domains is in play can be if you were doing a domain but nobody else is, right? So maybe I said, oh yeah, I want to have a domain, but no one else in the party is doing domain stuff. So how much domain stuff can I do? How much stuff do I want? And I'm cognizant that we're having fun adventuring. If I'm looking at the rest of the table saying if I thought, well, I could maybe do a domain if other people were doing domains. But if that's not their interest, I'm not ready. I don't know if I want to start another character now or put this one on the back burner or whatever. So kind of what else is there sort of to do, right? What other things can I aim for? And I think talking to Daniel, I said, well, let's go with the paladin. 'Cause we've been dealing with a lot of demons and things like that in the game, and we ran into an NPC who was, I think, is essentially a paladin. Well, you know what? I can go train with her, kind of become a paladin. And when I said that, I had not looked up what paladins were like. As Daniel's doing OD&D and chainmail. Most of the combat stuff comes out of chainmail, or all the combat stuff, I should say, comes out of chainmail, but classes and things like that comes out of OD&D. Though he'll tweak things back and forth. So we actually the next week or that week, no, yeah, the next week we kind of came in and like, okay, well, what kind of stuff? And one of the things I noticed was that so when they introduce in Greyhawk in the supplement, when they introduce, I'm trying to find the unfortunately with the way these 3 LBB, the 3 brown books, and then these original supplements are written. Things are they instead of making things nice and simple, saying here's the rules for being a paladin, they kind of scattered them around a bit. The interesting thing is they basically say, hey, now that you know, so okay, here's the supplement, right? So you've been playing the 3 brown books. Hey, Magnus, you've been playing 3 brown books, and now you get supplement 1 Greyhawk. Comes in the mail, comes in the post. You pick it up. Hold on a minute. I think I've got my copy here somewhere. My physical copy comes in the mail, comes in the post. All right, here it is. Right now, Magnus, we're talking about paladins and kind of a larger discussion, I think, of sort of prestige classes that I'm jumping ahead slightly. I did talk about Iron Age fortified settlements earlier that you can go back and check out that you missed because I'm already been at almost almost 40 minutes already. Um, so you basically in the supplement it just kind of says, well, you want to be a paladin, and of course, I don't really like this approach, but you and also thieves show up too. But just in terms of paladins, you just kind of like, okay, you want to be a paladin. Here are your just trying to figure out where the actual okay, so not there, not there. Okay. You want to become a paladin. You couldn't be a paladin before because paladins didn't exist. You've been playing the 3 brown books, but now you've got supplement 1 Greyhawk. And hey, we got this new thing of paladin. So there has to be a method for one to become a paladin or choose to become a paladin because that option just didn't exist. In the book, all they say is you got to meet these prerequisites. Okay. In the case of paladins, you have to have a charisma score of 17 or greater. Now, what Daniel did for the game is he had me basically, like in BX or I think in ODD also, you can, at the beginning when you're doing character generation, you can tweak your stats to kind of try to get your highs and lows. He let me do that to get my charisma. My character's charisma was not 17 plus, but I was able to, I think I had to, kind of funny, I had to lower my wisdom, I think, to get my charisma up, or maybe it was my intelligence. Either way, I had to kind of shave some down to add charisma to get to charisma 17. But once you get there, that's kind of it. So I'll just going to read this section right here. Charisma scores of 17 or greater by fighters indicate the possibility of paladin status if they are lawful from the commencement of play for that character. If such fight, so I guess here they are really. So I hadn't read it close. They are really saying for that character. So I guess you're not supposed to be able to choose midstream like I did, but I feel like probably back in the day, I'm sure people did. If such fighters elected to, they can become paladins, always doing lawful deeds. For any chaotic act, will immediately revoke the status of paladin. They can never be regained. Paladin has a number of very powerful aids in his continual seeking for good. And then we get in kind of to the abilities. So I think the interesting thing here is it's the paladin hood is just a package. It's a package of skills that you unlock. You choose, you pay a price, and the price is that you have to be lawful and you can't, right? You have to sign up for the paladin code. You have to sign up for the paladin code, but then you get this package of skills. Some of them unlock at different levels. So you have paladins of 8th level and above, dispel evil, and then can detect evil. So you don't get that from jump, you get that at 8th level. I think there's another bit about if you get a holy sword, then you do some all kinds of crazy. So you get the lay on hands, you have a higher saving throw, but it's basically just this package. There's no, and what I liked about it is there's no advancement. There's no paladin XP advancement table. You're still on essentially the I think, am I misspeaking myself? Yeah. There's no clearly the thief. There's no different no different experience point thing. You don't go anything of that. It's just you're still essentially advancing as a fighter. I guess you could say it's that kind of fighter subclass. They don't call it a subclass. They say, well, you're a paladin now, but you're a fighter. You're a fighter who was chosen paladinhood. I think this is a really interesting model for doing subclasses or prestige type classes or anything. Now, I don't like what I wouldn't like, what I would not do for myself if I was going to have, if I was running the game, I would have gotten rid of the charisma effect because I just always feel like there's this kind of rich get richer. Oh, you've got awesome skills. Now you get to be really be a more awesome character. Or you got these awesome attribute roles. I always feel like I like that the attribute roles are mostly not have a little bit of a importance, but aren't overwhelming. So for me, I would replace something like, hey, charisma score. Hey, R-dubs. Hey, charisma score is great to do something in world. So maybe I would say that at level one, you can't even be a paladin because you haven't seen the world. You haven't done anything yet. But do something in the world. Maybe you need to swear allegiance to a certain order. Maybe you have to be a hero type, meaning you reach fourth level. Fourth level is a fighter. Then suddenly you could do these things. Maybe you have to do right. I would put this in world. Maybe have an experience point. Not like a level threshold might be one way to do it. Marry that level threshold with some kind of thing that you do. All right, you decide to swear allegiance to a certain religion, and therefore, and you're lawful, sure. And you haven't done anything. I guess you're still lawful. You haven't done anything overtly chaotic. Then you can become a paladin. But then that paladin is like, here's a bunch of some abilities. Maybe they break out to different levels, like paladin stuff. But then that's it. You don't have any other tracks of advancement. You're not multi-classing, if you will. You're still a fighter or whatever you were. You just have these things now. Which the other thing is, which is interesting, is that you could very easily take this paladin packet, and there's nothing specifically other than maybe the fact that you can have a holy sword. See, here it is. Paladins with any form of holy sword, quote unquote, are virtually immune to all magic. You could take out the sword part and put kind of a holy weapon. There's nothing even here that says that you have to be a fighter. You could probably turn this into some kind of like, I don't know, holy somebody, come up with another term that binds you to some religious cult, church, temple, worship, whatever deity or force, and then you can unlock this package, and this package gives you some stuff. Hey, now you can lay on hands. If you get to eighth level or whatever level, now you get to spell evil. Or you could set up a thing like, hey, at these levels you unlock these things. But that's it. Just a little package. Boop, you got it. You did the thing. You went up a level, and now you got paladin. Now you got paladin stuff. Hey, Ardubs, this is just from Greyhawk. This is the original. This I mean this one I'm looking at on screen is from the reprint, which is available on drive through. This is just from Greyhawk, so we're talking about supplement one to OD&D. And in supplement one, when they introduced the paladin, now they have it. I'd forgotten this. They have it. You have to be from the commencement of play for that character, so that you can't retroactively. In my case, in Daniel's game, I was able to basically morph into a paladin, which I think is a lot better. They say here you're supposed to commence play as a paladin, but I think that I like the idea that you can adopt this in play. But what I think the thing that I like most of all, just what they have here, is it's just a package. It's a package of abilities. You get it, paladin, but nothing else really changes. You're still a fighter in terms of your early progressions. You don't have to add more experience point things. It doesn't change the way things scale. You still scale as a fighter. And I thought that if you wanted to have different packages like this, you could do the same thing. You could have pound and just change the wording so it's less warrior focused, and then anybody could become, a holy, a blessed, I don't know, whatever, holy, whatever, blessed, whatever, and then you could have a wizard could become, a holy wizard and unlock these same things. Maybe even you don't even need a cleric because you just, uh, you your cleric becomes someone who has taken this whatever package that gives you lay on hands, something like that. RW, I think it's a great way to play it is able to morph into it rather than start. Yeah, I mean, in our case, we didn't. I mean, I basically in Daniel's game, I just took over basically a retainer. So I took over someone who's already pre-existing. Um, but yeah, it was just kind of one of these things that like Daniel's very flexible in his approach, which is nice, and I agree with it. How I think he and I think are on the same wavelength on that stuff. So for him, it was like, oh, you want to be a paladin? Let's look at it. He looked at the rules and was like, oh, okay, this is what paladins have to do, and you'll go and you'll train, and then blah blah blah. You'll come out and you'll your charisma will go up and your wisdom will go down, and bada boom, bada bing. After so long of training, bam, you're a paladin, and now you just have unlocked kind of that you have this paladin, package, and it's just very neat. I just like the way it's just kind of neat. Like Glog, the what Goblin Laws of Gaming things has this kind of 3 or 4 level thing, and that's kind of fun too. But this is even simpler. It's like, look, whatever you're advancing in already, you're still advancing as that. Now you just got this block, and then hey, we can put these things where we want. Okay, but you can lay on hands. Great. If you get to 8th level, you get this thing. Great, and you can put the abilities wherever you want to and whatever, and this boom, you've got it. Easy, easy peasy. And I wonder if in some world, I guess the OSR gives us an ability to go back and do that. But I wonder, like, man, wouldn't have been kind of easier if things like Rangers and Paladins instead of getting blown up or barbarians and things, instead of getting blown up into their own whole something were just these nice little packages. I mean, a thief could be the same thing. Like you could take all the thief skills, which I know, some of the folks don't like the thief for this very reason, and just make some packages. Oh, burglar, that's assassin, whatever. And you do something, and I always like to do the thing in game, right? And or I guess training works too, because I think in terms of the fiction where we'd met in our game, we had met this paladin individual type, and then I went back and I decided to make this commitment. And I went with train with them, so that was worked fine. I also like the idea that maybe you decide as a player, hey, I want to become whatever. Like, what do I need to do this thing? And maybe it's, hey, you got to go on a quest for this person who can train you, or you have to do a thing, or like I said, you have to swear allegiance to a particular uh, god or cult or whatever, and then you can do the thing, or you have to join the thieves guild, and then you can unlock burglar or assassin, kind of whatever. Um, Art says the nice thing about this is that you can turn it into quest lines for the characters, even if you start with level 0. Normal man is like armored foot or something. You can, yeah. I mean, if you're going full chainmail, you can absolutely start with that. Or even if um, you're starting at kind of a level 1 thing, you could totally figure out. And you could have, I mean, you could let people start, I suppose, start with these. But I kind of like the idea of starting simple and then breaking out into these as you go on. Because one of the other things is like, a couple things, right? So like 5th edition now, and a lot of those games, I'm not trying to single out 5th edition. There's a bit of that analysis paralysis. And I know that I kind of like the way 5th edition does it just in terms of first level, though nobody really starts at first level. You just have one of the overarching archetypes, and then you get to level 3 and then you break out into your subclasses, which is a way I think of kind of letting you just kind of take some dip your toes and things, and when you get comfortable, figure it out. I know everyone usually starts at level 3 where you got all your subclasses, which then I think negates the help that kind of dipping your toes in does. But there's analysis paralysis. You can be a lot of things. I think if you're just like, hey, you start off as if you want to do wolves in the coast, it's like you're just a fighter guy. Anything else is something you're going to find out there in the world and figure out. Like I think that's really cool. I think if you wanted to say, hey, I want to be a wizard or a warrior, essentially, pick a path, and then everything else just kind of as you do things unlocks. As a GM, it's very flexible, I think, because then I can tailor things to the world a lot. I'm not worried about all these. Do I got to figure out the advancement tables and XP requirements and blah blah blah? No, I just want to figure out, well, what do I have to do? Like I can wait till somebody expresses an interest in it. I want to be a dragon slayer. All right, cool. What does that entail? Well, you're probably gonna go kill a dragon. But if you can kill a dragon, then maybe you can unlock these things. You know. R Dub's got some more comments I got to read. Let's see. Ardub says the game they've been running is starting everyone at level 0, armor foot, and then gathering things. There are new abilities added through the class system. That's pretty cool. I can dig it. So what they've been doing is letting the quest dictate what ingredients the players gather. They end up building a potion that they drink that allows them X amount of rolls on the fantasy combat table. This allows them to roll as a hero type on the 2d6 table, even though they're normal men. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I think the way Daniel's thing. I think he's a bit more strict, but I think he does say that like elves with magic swords roll on the fantasy combat table, or maybe a magic weapon will put you on the like a +1 sword will put you on the fantasy combat table. I have to remember, but it's a neat idea. So just if you're not familiar in chainmail, and I have chainmail right. Hold on a second, and I showed this off. I think my last right here. You've got. I'm gonna switch. Hold on a second. Let me switch some things off here. Okay. You've got and you can see my more or less my somewhat tan. And I think I showed this off, I think last year. Right? You got the fancy combat table. If you'll note, hero on the warrior track, you got to be at least a hero to get on this board, or a wizard. And you can potentially be if your character class says you can be hero -1 or something, you can also get on the board that way. But there is just outside of that, you're kind of stuck. Now, what does that mean? What that means is if your class, let me see if I can get an example here. Hold on, I have my OD and I have monster. Not, sorry, I have book one here somewhere. I think here we go. In Men and Magic, you get to the attack. No, it'll be the not in the attack matrix. It'll be yeah. All right, let me. Oops, I'm gonna do this again. Okay. Notice here with cleric. So you've got this. Oh, hold on a minute. Doing this mirror mode. Okay, you can see where it gives your levels. They're not really numbered, but you see acolyte is basically level one, patriarch name level. See these kind of manpower equivalents. Notice that you don't get down to hero -1 until you're see one, two, three, four, five, six, seventh, sixth level. So for a sixth level takes you sorry, a cleric, it takes you until sixth level to get that hero piece so that they can fight on the fantasy combat table. If you don't have that hero piece, you're stuck. I mean, in chainmail, it just means that you can't challenge them. If there's a creature that's on the fantasy combat table and you're not, you're toast. That's it. And then in terms of I think in the kind of fantasy sort of D&D chainmail mashup, I think different people do it differently. I think Daniel has, and I don't know if it's in the books or not. I kind of think it is in there somewhere. It might be interpretation. He says, I think elves or whatever. I don't know if everybody are elves, but an elf plus a magic sword, they get kind of up, they get bumped up to hero status in terms of the fantasy combat table. There are some ways you can kind of sneak on there early, but there are few and far between. So if you had potions that let you roll some dice on the fantasy combat table, that's a big deal because if something's on the fantasy combat table like a dragon and you're not, sayonara. It is over. It is over for you. So that's kind of a big deal. So I've been digging on this and I've been just sort of pondering this kind of idea of having this sort of I was big on the prestige class thing in third edition. Not so much the way they were presented in the books, but just the concept of it. The idea that the prestige I don't even like I even like the name prestige class because the idea that you're kind of doing something, you're gaining prestige out there in the world, and that translates into a class. I really like this way of doing it here. So I was thinking like, man, it's a kind of a neat way to just merge things together. Take this kind of idea of just putting a package of things together. And like the paladin, it can have some things that you're taking on new responsibilities, you're taking on some new restrictions, but you're getting this package of skills. Nothing else changes about your class, and you're done. You just if you want things to unlock at certain levels, go. If you want things to have kind of some kind of gradual growth, go. But that's it, and just go easy peasy. And so, in my experience playing that the Paladin and Daniel's game, it's been the transition's been basically just like, oh, now I have these couple extra abilities. Nothing else changes. I don't have to look anything else up. I don't have to do anything else. Daniel didn't have to find, write up, and do a whole thing. It's just have it. You get it. You have it or you don't, sort of thing. Oh, RW, you're using the Overland outdoor survival map for the Overland stuff. That's awesome. Oh, R-dubs confirms it is in there with elves. I knew it was in there for somebody. I think Daniel had mentioned elves before, so um, that's why I had. So that I think is all for that segment. Now the last segment, let me switch over to my other thing. This is a stream of 3 segments. So we talked about the Oppidum. If you missed that, you can go back and check it out. It's just me uh, kind of talking about sort of Iron Age fortified settlements. So I've been, we've done this on a couple of streams, looking at okay, you got a hex adventure, or so, or you are. I think it's come up in people preparing their own hex crawls, and also I think when people are looking at hex crawl products, this concept of the points of interest in a hex, how many you should have. And I think I want to say, and I meant to dig it up before this, but I think hold on a second. Let's see if I can grab it really quick. I don't think I have it. I know I own it. I don't think I have it downloaded here. I'd say it's one of the nice things about something like drive-throughs. You can re-download things if let's see. I think I'm gonna download interior. I don't know. There's different interiors. I'll take the bigger one. Let me see if this. All right. No, I don't think that did. No. Hold on. Let's try that again. Okay. Okay. Title page. Use this book. Reading tables. Maybe it doesn't have it. I don't remember where it is. I don't remember where it is. Maybe I'm misremembering. In any case, we had this concept of your these areas of interest or points of interest and how many you should have in your hex crawl. And I thought it was the 30 Sandbox companion, but it might have been someone else. It might have been filling the hexes. It might have been filling the hexes. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not going to go grab that one. Uh, I think it was 1d6 worth. Some people were saying 3, 4, 5, 6, and I just think this is too much. I have not seen, and this is where I'm. This part of this is a kind of a call for um, a shout, a call, no, a call for essentially feedback is how folks are using these hex crawls with all these points of interest because it kind of confuses me. I'm having trouble grokking it. And here's the thing. Now I'm using point of interest. It's not always, and this is the other thing too, right? In a hex, different hex maps will have different things keyed. So I guess I should call it keyed encounters. Maybe is better because it can be a lot of different things. Maybe I should grab. Hold on, let me see if I can grab. I know I've got the wizards on the wizards. Wolves on the coast somewhere here. If I can find it. Oh, you know what? I think I know where that is. You have your hex crawl. You've got your map that's keyed, and then you've got these keyed encounters, right? Classically, you just kind of had either none or one. You'd have one encounter or you'd have none encounter. And I felt that worked. I thought that worked okay. I thought that worked pretty well. I'm not gonna lie. Let's see. Is this it? Yeah. So this doesn't have the map, but you kind of encounters, and then you'll see in a certain area. Now, some areas will have more stuff written about it than others, but essentially, if one thing. So we come here to this hex, Sabinus, or I don't know if that's supposed to be like Savinus. I don't know if it's kind of an Irish thing. Anyway, ancient apple trees crowd the island of Savinus. Sleek, glossy birds and fish eat the ever-ripe fruit. Any staying the night here and eating the fruit find themselves fully healed. If transported off the island, the fruit is poisoned, killing those unable to make a physique save. So very simple. So this keyed thing is just it's. I think it'd be interesting. So I think I got to break this down. So the first thing I got to break down is what are we have. These, this is why it gets difficult to talk about it because people put different things in their hexes. So we have I guess we have sort of keys. And keys, I'm talking about all these descriptions. I'm talking about are the keys, right? So we have all these things. So we have keys that are basically your general circumstances in the hex. In Savinus, there's the terrain or whatever however the it's whatever the thing is in the world, just its general nature is there. That's what it is. There's nothing timely here. Nobody's here. We could roll for random encounter, but there's no particular creature here. There's no settlement here. It's just here is the nature of the place. That is one sort of key. Maybe I should kind of write this. Probably write this down. And maybe I should go. What is the key? So it could just be a description of the nature of the place. I know I'm using a lot of. All right, that's one thing. Same thing for this next one. It's the same. So here we have, there's this one's a little bit more complicated because there's a location. So we have the kind of descriptive and then location. I don't know if all of these, I don't even know, this might not even be a great, I just picked one of these randomly. This, this one might, this document, I might need to go to another one just for, so this one, if we're in dead meadery, we have a description. So this is a town, I think. Let's see. Above the sea, silent hives and rows marching towards a set of buildings. Thick wild vegetation crawls over the buildings, half swallowing them. 12 gnolls lair. Okay, so this is a lair. Now we have kind of a lair location. So this would be in the key. This one would be key could be inhabitants. So we have, inhabitants, either monsters, it could be monstrous. And it could be obviously one or more of these. We have inhabitants. So that's another kind of key. And then we get there. This is another lair. Whole bunch of crabs. See, this one, there's not so much about the nature of the place. There's nothing unusual there or interesting there, so much so other than the rock pools where there are thousands of crabs dancing. If disturbed, they all scuttle in the ocean. This is, in a sense, I almost call it more of an event because as soon as you try to interact with the crabs, they run away. So it's not like they're here, oh, and we can come back and start crabbing. No, it's just kind of it's a phenomenon or a event. So I'll just put that here. Another one. And then let's see if there's any other examples. That's a settlement, which I'm just putting as inhabitants. Another lair, that's also inhabitants. So here's one. So 12.05, the Hermit of Masks, or Hermit of Masks. No, the a bedraggled, decrepit old man pisses in the fork of the river and laughs nastily to himself. He carries 3 masks, each made from the face of an orc. He knows how to cast Charm Monster, but has never used it. He has forgotten his name and much else besides. He realizes he has been spotted. He will flee towards the mountains. He is not hard to chase. That's it. So this is we could call this an inhabitant, but I'm going to call this more of I guess it could be an event. I'm going to call it an encounter. I think it's I'm just going to put it as like non-interactive. It's just happening or it happens. You kind of come to see if this is more interactive, right? You can interact. you could interact with the guy peeing in the river. But once that's happened, right? You've met the Hermit of Masks. He's come, he's fled, you've done something, that's gone. The next time you come here in 1205, I presume this guy's not here anymore. Crepit old man's not back to the same spot, laughing nastily and peeing in the river. He's done. You've dealt with him, right? So this comes to the next step. Now you could have three or more things layered in here, but this is where I my questioning comes in and what I'm wondering about. So you could have one or more of these things. Obviously, description I think is good. If the places, but it's not always necessary, right? This Hermit of Masks. I suppose I should find the map. Hold on, let me find the map. I can find this the labeled. Hold on a minute. Okay, we are in Albin, and the Hermit of Masks is 1205. And there we go. Right here. Hermit of Masks right there. So the fact that we don't have a description of this area, that's not something that's keyed. So we look and say, like, okay, we've got a key. Our key can have one or more of these things. It can have the description of the nature of the place. Presumably it needs some description or it benefits from having it, something weird going on. We could talk about the inhabitants, and I'm concluding layers, settlements, just wander, whatever, anything like that. We could also have a phenomenon, an event like the crabs in the pools. It's something interesting that's happened. It could be, oh, look, there's a shadow or there's a rainbow in the waterfall or something, but it's just kind of there. It happens. And something really, it's something interesting. Maybe it's thematic. Maybe it does something, but it's not, like the crabs in the pools. Oh, that's cool. Let me go catch a crab. As soon as you approach the crabs, they all scuttle into the sea. And maybe if someone wants to go on a fishing expedition, they could, whatever. But that's it. There's no greater there's maybe somewhere else there'll be a reference to those crabs, but other than that, there's no, and that's it. Okay, you saw it, and you come back. Maybe with that one, it repeats. So the crabs, when no one, when danger leaves, the crabs come back. They start dancing again. Maybe you can see that over and over again. Maybe not. Obviously, with the encounter, or I say obviously, but yeah, I think with the encounter, it's happens. It's gone, right? And these are all 6 mile hexes, so this is not super tiny. So this area, if we go back here, is 6 miles, so over 30 whatever square miles river, and then the old man is basically where these rivers meet, kind of at the, I guess, the confluence of the rivers. Maybe not. I don't even know if it even says this. Even say if he's, oh yeah, he's at the fork. So he's at the fork of the river and he's there. Great. And if he's not there, if you've already dealt with him, then it is what it is. It's sort of, I guess, uh, river terrain with that's leading up into the mountains with some woods, river woods, mountains leading, I guess, depending on your angle, either leading from or to the main mountain range or part of it. I think this is, no, these are hills. I think those hills. So the foothills, green leading up into the mountain chain. So my question is, or where I get to with this key. So look, he could have put five more things in the hex, filled it out. But I don't know what the purpose of those things are. And this is where I'm struggling. This is where I am struggling to see. I'm struggling to see, or I'm interested to see from usage. So this is going to be me really appealing to you folks out there. What is your usage of all these other key things? So if there had been five keyed things in the hex, how are you interacting? How are you in your game interacting with these? Because, and this is where I kind of like, what are we doing when we're in this hex? So the couple things you're doing is you're exploring the hex. Presumably, you're searching for something, or something, or someone. You're traveling towards somewhere else. I'm not sure. Is there even something else you might be doing? in your hex? I'm not sure. There's probably some. I mean, I suppose you could be. I'm going to stay off. You can get these kind of edge cases of okay, we're surveying for our domains. We want to build a castle. I'm going to kind of leave those to the side. You could sort of maybe that's under exploring, maybe something else. But essentially, those are the things you're doing. We're going through. We're traveling. I'm just going to use the wolves map again. We're going from this village here in 1104 to 1304. We for whatever reason we want to buy, let's just say, hey, we want to bypass this road. Looks good, it's going to take too long, or there's somebody on that road we don't want to meet. Whatever's going on, we've made enemies in 1303, but we need to get kind of this back door thing. Great, we decide we're gonna zoop in here instead of going, you know one, two, three hexes, four hexes, basically around the horn like that. We're gonna classic, cut it over the middle. Hopefully, though, we can ford the river somewhere here, and we're good. So we're doing that. We are traveling. All right. We leave the village here. We go into the woods. We roll some dice. We don't get any encounters. Let's just say we this is our first time into that hex. So we conveniently, maybe too conveniently, but that's kind of the way these keys work. Is generally speaking, first time into the hex, you run into the key bit. So whatever we get there happens to be whenever the party gets there, it happens to be where the old man's peeing in the fork in the river. That's just kind of how it goes. But you can make it more complex if you want to. With it, oh, I'm going to roll to see if he's there. You can do some different things like that. But they buy the book. It's just hey, first time you enter that hex, it's presumed that you pass by the fork in the river. You see the old man. So you go there. You see the old man. Ha ha ha. Wah ha ha. He's always got what we're checking him out. He's weird. Maybe we're eyeballing him, and hey, and oh, he seems to have these masks. They seem to have kind of orcish casts to them, where they look like orcish visages. The faces on the mask, like, oh, interesting. Uh, then he notices us kind of checking him out, or we're just walking towards him because we don't know the guy's going to run away, and he starts running away towards 1206, this other hex, which I think doesn't seem like it's key. Okay, right. So that's the situation. Great. So what now, brown cow? We've basically there's if assuming we're traveling, so we're not interested in the mystery and the majesty of this fork in the river thing. We've seen the old man. We decide that our business at 13.04 is too important. The old man's not in our plans. Maybe we'll mark it down saying, find this old man later. He seemed to be running up in the woods or the mountains. He's probably going to come back down at some point. Maybe we'll find his hovel or wherever. We'll find it later, but we're ready to know it, but we're not in there now. Okay, great. Moving on. And moving on will take however long it takes. But in my mind, anyway, for 1205, that's it. You saw the old man peeing in the fork. I don't need any more encounters because that's not the purpose. That's kind of not the purpose of what's happening. You're traveling. So what am I going to do with five other encounters that I've keyed in there? And this is what I'm struggling with. It's like, well, what am I doing with it? If I'm just doing it for my own prep, what are they? What good are they to me? You're leaving 1205. You're not staying there, right? So that's my first step. So, okay, that's on the travel vector. Okay, we're traveling through. We hit something happens, or we encounter something because there's something in there. Oh yeah, we encounter, but okay, we're traveling. We're moving on, or we decide to follow the old guy into the hills, try to capture him. Maybe we recognize that charm monster for those masks. Whatever, we recognize something like, oh, maybe he's got a spell or something weird we can use. Okay, that might be true too. But that's either way, we've dealt with it. Having an additional encounter, I don't know how that, because either we interact with the encounter that's there, or I guess we don't. This is on travel. So if we don't interact with the encounter, we're traveling on, or we're interacting with the encounter, in which case I don't need an additional one because we're dealing with the hermit. They're on some kind of foot chase or up into the hills, up into the mountains. with this hermit. So then that's the shtick for this. I don't need. I still arrive at the same conclusion. It's okay. They're interacting with the hermit. More encounters are not needed, right? But now, but you go, whoa, 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 wait. Okay, that's just if we're traveling. What if we're searching? Okay, so let's say I don't know. Let's say that we the Hermit of Masks or something else from 1104 we're chasing. So now we're not just traveling through. We're searching. We've come. We've heard. Maybe the people in 1104 have been telling us about some weird old guy that's been coming around, creeping out the youngsters, stealing food, and they'd seen him. Seems to be hiding out somewhere in this area, the foothills, the forested foothills. Whatever. Okay, so now we're searching for the old man. We haven't seen him yet. We're searching now. It could be that we just find the old man. That is the encounter in the hex. Oh yeah, he thinks he's all alone. Nobody from the village has tracked him down so far, so he's not really aware of anybody. So you go towards the river and you find him. He doing that. If that's the reason you're there, then again you're interacting with it, right? And I still then say, okay, well, what do I need five other keyed encounters for, or keys of any sort? Because now you're interacting with the hermit. That's what you're here for. But you say, okay, well, what if they're not looking for the hermit? They're looking for. There's an owl bear that's been spotted. The people in 1104. It's not the hermit that's bothering them. It's some owl bear that's been predating people on the edges of the village. Seems to be layering somewhere here. Tracks and things have led. Okay, great. So now we're looking in. Now that the party decides to look in 1205 for this owlbear. They're not necessarily passing through. They're not necessarily looking for the Hermit of Masks. Somebody's rolling. Oh, it's a walker. I don't know if you can hear it. It's one of those things that in my ears it sounds so loud and grating. Someone's got one of those walkers. They don't have good wheels on them, and on the concrete, just oof, that's tough. Okay, anyway, not looking for the Hermit of Masks. We're looking for an owlbear. But the owlbear's last seen here. So there are a couple of options you can do. One is you're following a trail, and you could just say that okay, you have a trail that's been established, and the owl bear's not stealthy, so it's easy trail to follow, and it gets to the owl bear cave, and you deal with the owl bear. Okay, that's could be one thing, or it's like nope, we're gonna roll some kind of search. We're looking for the owl bear. Okay, you roll your search, you come up empty on the owl bear tracks, so now you have the hermit, and now you have the same encounter we've had, the same key encounter. Hermit runs off. Maybe you follow the hermit hoping that he can tell you about the owl bear. Maybe he knows about the owl bear. You can kind of work that in there. Okay, let's say he runs away. Well, he's not an owl bear. So you say, well, the hermit's here. It's not an owl bear. Now, here I could see potentially if you say, well, this is where you want more encounters. This is where you want more keys because now they're still searching. They didn't find the owl bear. They found the hermit. They're going to keep searching for the owl bear. Do we need other things in here? And here I would kind of say, I don't know if you do. You could, and you've got these tools. Like I'm just scrolling all the way up here because I want to get to the wandering monster. Wandering. I think we're here, and obviously this isn't no owl bear in here. Okay, but presumably, let's just say one of these was an owl bear, or let's just say that it was spiders instead of an owl bear. That was. You can use this stuff because the thing is if you're searching so the thing is if you have a goal and this is really the same thing in traveling if you have a goal generally speaking unless it's really really uh, uh, uh tempting you're looking for something you got to save the kid before they're sacrificed to the evil cult. How big and it's timely you got to get there before sundown and it's already the afternoon. How much How much how much shiny things you have to put on your lure to get the party to go astray? It's got to be a lot, right? It's got to be something major. Otherwise, what's going to happen is if I had 6 encounters there, if I had 6 encounters in this hex, and the one encounter is the owlbear, one encounter is the aforementioned hermit, and I got 3 other ones, let's say. What's going to happen as the party keeps encountering these things? Oh, you come into a brook and it's shady, but there's a little waterfall there, and the waterfall always seems to show a rainbow in the afternoon. Like, oh, it's pretty. Is the owlbear lair here? Nope. Moving on. All right. You see, there's 2 satyrs, and they're throwing dice made of bone against the trunk of a tree, and they're giggling and laughing and playing on their pan flutes. Is the owlbear here? No. Did the satyrs know? Satire, you there? You there, old woman? You know where the owlbear cave is? No. All right, that's it. We're moving on. Right? They're gonna keep. They're just gonna bypass those encounters that are not the thing that they're looking for. Probably aren't going to be particularly compelling to them in that in that time. He's a wandering creature. If they're just looking around for tracks and things, and okay, the owlbear's one, and they can't find it, so they're gonna find something else. Maybe they find wolves, they find whatever orcs, whatever they find, a giant, a who knows? They find that stuff. Do I need to have had to go through and key a whole bunch of stuff for that to be no? Because I think the party is just they're gonna be looking for what they're looking for, and if it's not it, they're not gonna engage with it. So why am I spending time on it? And then I think the other one is like, well, you go, okay, Todd. What if they come back to the hex? They've dealt with the hermit. They left. Now they're coming back. Then I could say, well, yeah, sure. If you've got time in your prep cycle, you want to roll a new encounter, maybe depending on how the hermit left, did they capture the hermit? They not. Maybe the hermit's back doing something different, or maybe they find him in a different state, but they're back. Otherwise, maybe something else moves in. Maybe an owlbear. Maybe the first time it was the hermit. Now there is an owlbear in there. That could be part of your prep cycle. But how often is your party going to be crisscrossing this particular hex? And if they are crisscrossing it a bunch, then at some point they're going to have their own trail that they're following. It just becomes known, and don't need. And then I also don't need to because it's some you kind of think about when you're looking at these hexes. I think the kind of presumption is initially that there your track is you're kind of wandering around. You're getting lost a little bit. Oh, I don't know. End up in some weird path going on. But then if you're going to keep going through here, maybe your first path is kind of dipsy doodly, then your second path's a little bit more regular. By the time you're doing it anymore, you almost have made your own road. All right, we're gonna go here till we hit to we call it the hermit P point, and then bam, we go there. You're gonna lock it down to a science. And at that point, I wouldn't be rolling for encounters very much anymore because it's not really an unknown. There's nothing new and exciting there. You're not looking for. You're not venturing out to these little corners where there might be something you haven't seen yet. You're just zip, zip, zap, zip, zip, zap. So again, what are those other encounters doing for me? But I really want to hear from you folks to know, well, how are you guys using all these? If you had your druthers and each hex as keys has 6 keys in it, what are all those keys being used for? Are you making them in it? Would you like is it a table of keys where you want to be able to roll randomly each time the party enters the hex to see what they get, which is fine. But are you ever going to get to the end of that table if you have 6 points of interest? Are you going to be breaking it down that, okay, they're going to be in this hex so I don't know. I think for me, hills, it might have it as 2 or 3 turns, expedition turns, right? So basically, if dungeon turns being 10 minutes, I use about 3 hours. So maybe this is like a 9 hour trip through here. I think I don't remember exactly what I have at the moment between the forest and the hills, and maybe you have the river crossing in there. I say it's like a 9 hour trek, at least your first time through, as you're taking care, as you're navigating and everything. So okay, you get in here. So maybe you want to have 3 different things, but I don't really think that's necessary. And it starts to feel, I think you get this feel, it almost starts to feel railroady, I think. I talked about this. I mentioned in my own when I tried to run a hex crawl. Some folks who are not used to it, and I tried to put a lot of stuff in there to make it feel like, oh, look, all this stuff is here. They felt like they didn't, because they weren't running into empty spots. They felt like it was too forced. So I think there's gonna be some of that also. But I want to know, like, what are you using? Because I see people asking for all these keys, hex keys, and I wonder, like, what do you need them all for? What are you gonna do with all this? How often is your party coming through here? And if they're only coming through, presumably, you can really only count on them coming through once in a short in any kind of time. Well, what are you gonna do with five? You know, do you need more than one? And Wolves on the Coast is people, everybody I've talked to loves, holds in high regard. Only's got one. And some of them, settlements obviously are useful more, but other one like the Hermit, like the Crabs, it's just one thing. Because I think the idea is the concept is you're moving through and you're gonna do this, and then you're moving on to other things. Maybe if you're in some part of the game where you're really interacting with these peoples, whatever, a lot. But then once you're interacting with these things a lot, like let's say here we're in the Black Strath or Straith, I'm not sure. We're interacting with these different village and this fort or fortification here. We're doing all this stuff. Then once you're getting into that element, these empty hexes in between, they're not that meaningful because you're moving in between. You're moving. You're just trying to get there. So you can just roll for your wandering encounter check if you want to, or maybe if you want to uh, repopulate these. But having bunches of keys in here, it's not really, to my mind anyway, it doesn't seem really productive. It's not. They're not interested in it. They're interested in what's going on with these locations they're trying to get to. Maybe this thing here. They're dealing with all this stuff. So if look, there's somebody, if you get here and you're in all this business, you're like, oh look, there's another hermit here peeing against a tree. Press is go, yeah, whatever, moving on. Like it's not it's not really a draw. It's just a thing. It's like it's more the keys just becomes more like set dressing, I guess. But I want to know how you I want to know how you handle that. And let me know where I've gone astray in my thinking and my understanding of all these keys. And then I also want to know is if you were having someone who's been doing a bunch of keys on your hexes, if you think about taking the time, effort, whatever of putting in those keys, if you only did one and at least waited to see if your party spent more time in there to actually make it profitable to have multiple keys in there, and just think about what other kind of prep things could you do more of. You could key more hexes. You could do other things, right? That prep time you're using to create 5 keys or 6 keys, and maybe really have to look at your next. If you've been doing this your last couple of games, how many of those keys have you used? Do you force them? Do you put them all? Make sure they're all in there. You go with one on their first come in, and how often are they coming back to hit all those other ones? Right. I'm just kind of curious as to that usage and maybe thinking about what kind of alternatives. Yeah, but that was my thought on that. Um, that's all I got. So this is a good clumsy first stream back from vacay, but I'm glad to be back. Let me know your thoughts in the comments wherever you could find me. Holler at me wherever the Discord, I'm on the different social media. I'm around, so find me. Let me know. Let me know what do you think. Let me know where I've gone horribly wrong in my thinking. That's all I've got for now. Game on, everybody, and I'll talk to you later. Bye now.